We called the LG V40 ThinQ undeveloped innovation back in 2018 for its huge feature list but middling quality. The camera and the battery weren't where we thought a $1,000 smartphone should be. This was around the time where smartphones and flagship smartphones were just hitting that 4-figure point, and the V40, which is what I'm going to call it throughout the rest of this video, just wasn't worth the money. So, 18 months later, has LG been able to buff out those imperfections and polish up its V40, or is it just as unrecommendable as it was when it first came out? That and more in this episode of Redux. Right off the bat, we have to talk about the value that this smartphone delivers in the used market. You can get a used unit on eBay for around $200 to $300, which is a far cry from its $999 MSRP that it released at back in 2018. And the amount of phone you get for your money is rather staggering, but allow me to rattle off some specs and features quickly here. A 6.4-inch QHD OLED display, 5 cameras, all different focal lengths, 10-watt wireless charging, a quad DAC equipped headphone port, microSD expansion, MIL STG810G and IP68 protection, a Snapdragon 845 with 6GB of RAM, and a properly quick capacitive rear fingerprint scanner. All of that for just $200 is kind of unreal, but let me talk about the viability and usability of the device in 2020. The first standout issue is the lack of Android 10 on the unit that I have here. Now, according to LG Korea, Android 10 is forecast to arrive in Q2 of 2020, so there's just under a couple of months left for LG to keep to its schedule. As for the usage experience, the phone feels pretty modern with its frosted glass back, which is something we're seeing in a lot of phones these days. The lightweight is quite refreshing, and between the multiple cameras, the USB-C port, and overall glass sandwich recipe, the V40 doesn't seem too out of place in 2020. However, there are a few aged hardware quirks. The bezels are pretty thick, all things considered. The USB-C port is only running at USB 2.0 and the storage is just UFS 2.0 versus the UFS 3.1 that we see in modern flagships. That last one is rather important when it comes down to longevity, because right now the phone feels fairly quick, but going a couple of years down the line, it's not going to feel as quick as the phones that have come out at that time. I ran the usual tests on the V40, playing Project Off-Road 2, Real Racing 3 and Fortnite, and for the most part it runs just as well as you'd expect. It's not buttery smooth 100% of the time, but 99% of the time you're getting respectable frame rates from high-end 3D titles, and so as a general usage phone, or even really a gaming phone, the performance is absolutely right there for the money. But, and this is quite a big but, the battery life hasn't been improved. And I guess that makes sense because you were never really going to be able to fix a 3300 mAh battery in software, considering the phone had a 6.4-inch display. So it doesn't really add up. It doesn't make sense to have a battery that small in a phone this large. Smartphones in 2020 have upwards of 4000 mAh cells, so you kind of have to expect the poor battery life. It was bad back then, and it's pretty bad now. The V40 struggled to be my secondary phone with the 0 Bluetooth connections. That's indoors and half brightness, mind you. So if you were really considering one of these for your main smartphone that you would use every day with maybe Bluetooth, GPS, Wi-Fi, cellular connections, that kind of thing, getting through a full day without a top-up would be nigh impossible. There is 18-watt quick charging, which is quicker than you might expect because the battery is that small that it tends to charge quite quickly anyway. So if you did need to top up throughout the day and you were happy to do that, then that's definitely a possibility. And we've got 10-watt wireless charging, which is still fairly quick for wireless charging, especially given the age of the device. So it's not all doom and gloom, it's just not that practical. And before we get onto the headline feature, the cameras, the audio-visual experience. The 6.4-inch display is a good size, and being OLED, the colour and contrast don't look too far off what you'd expect in 2020. The only thing you might consider aged is the fact that it's only 60Hz, but I'm personally fine with 60Hz, and that's going to be very much a subjective thing. The audio experience is probably the reason you were going to buy this smartphone in the first place. Now, the boombox speaker is a little bit gimmicky. It does work and it's okay. It's just not quite as good as some of the more modern hybrid stereo setups if you're just using it on its own. However, probably the reason that you really want to go with this phone is the headphone port, and that's rare. But what's even rarer is this specific headphone port because it's quad DAC equipped. I've personally moved on to wireless options for my mobile audio, but hooking up my DT990 Pros to the V40 was a brilliant experience. The clarity isn't something I've been able to experience for a while, and the ability to pick different presets in the EQ menu, right there in the menu, I mean, it's just brilliant. Granted, that feature's not going to be for everyone, but I'm starting to understand why people go with LG phones because of the audio experience, because it is just that much better. All that brings us to the camera, or rather cameras. In 2020, it's not really that uncommon for a flagship to come with 5 cameras. The Mate 30 Pro, the S20 Ultra, the Mi 10 5G, they all have 5 cameras. But the V40 was the first mainstream flagship to get all 3 focal lengths on the back: the ultra-wide, the wide, and the telephoto. But what's more uncommon in 2020 is the pair of cameras up front with 2 different focal lengths, a wide and an ultra-wide. Nice. The spec sheet was never really the issue back in 2018. It was the weird softness and overly dramatized colors, the software processing. From what I can gather, the colours seem to be pretty oversaturated, and the LG V40's photos look okay, just like they looked okay 18 months ago. There's plenty of dynamic range and the colours are definitely there, there's no denying that, and there's also a nice amount of natural background separation thanks to the wide f1.5 aperture being used on the main camera. We don't tend to see that kind of thing these days. That said, the softness is still there, particularly with the telephoto lens, and the amount of noise reduction being applied here is unreal, leading to these kind of oil painting looking photographs in more challenging conditions. LG's camera app is a mixed bag really, because whilst it does seem to follow the 2020 trend of a carousel layout with the options along the top of the screen, night mode is a button within the auto mode instead of being its own mode, and the zoom shutter slider thing is so 2018. It's functional, it's just not necessarily intuitive. As an overall camera package, the LG V40 does a decent job going into 2020, and it kind of fits in given the amount of versatility that's there, and that's the thing that a lot of 2020 flagships are going for, more versatility. It's just not quite got that quality of something like a Pixel 3a, for example. And that kind of sums up the V40 in 2020. It's an unbelievable deal on the used market. I mean, you can get kind of lower, kind of more scratched up versions of this for $200. And what you're getting there is a fairly modern system on a chip. You're getting good cameras, not amazing, but good, and it's definitely versatile. You're getting heaps of features. You're getting probably one of the best audio experiences on an entire smartphone. Nice, big, bright OLED display. You're getting all of that in $200 for kind of a lower spec option and $300 for something that's a little bit more spruced up. I think that's brilliant value. It's not going to be as quick as a OnePlus 6T, it's not going to have as good a screen as a Galaxy Note 8, and it's definitely not going to get the software updates of something like an iPhone 10 or 10s. But as an overall package, I can happily recommend this to those of you on the used market, because it looks like it's going to get Android 10 soon, and that combined with the rest of the features adds up to a pretty good device in my opinion. So that was this episode of Redux on the LG V40 ThinQ, one of the best used smartphones that you can buy today. Anyway, I've been Ryan Thomas with Android Authority. Please do hit like and subscribe to never miss a video like this one, and check out my article in the video description. I'll leave a link there as well. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.